They had a huge crowd, lots of poets read there. This really is a special thing that's going on around the world. And I asked myself, okay, 100,000 poets for change. What kind of change, do we want to see? And of course, if you have 100,000 poets, you've got 100,000 different ideas probably of what sort of change we want. Some people will want politics, some people will want social change, all kinds of changes, educational change, free subway tickets, who knows what. Myself, I actually want to see a change in our mindset. I'd like to get rid of what Blake called the mind-forged manacles that so many of us, in fact probably all of us, wear without even knowing it. We live in such a pragmatic society. Our way of looking at the world is basically scientific. If we see a body of water like the ocean, the first thought that pops in our minds is usually H2O. And then the second thought might be, how could I harness the waves and the tides in order to generate electricity and make a profit? And this was written about by William Wordsworth 200 years ago. And I thought just for his sake, because today is not just a day for the poets who happen to be living now in the world. It's actually a day for poetry itself, for every poet who ever lived, who ever wrote in any language, in any country, at any time. Mr. William Wordsworth talked about the mindset, basically, of our pragmatic world. So I thought I'd begin by just reciting one of his poems. The world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not. Great God, I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. So might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. It's Mr. Wordsworth. And not that I'm trying to make a comparison between myself and Wordsworth, but I'd like to now read a little bit of what I've tried to do. I think the main function really, what is the cultural change I want to see? What is the mindset change? It's a change to allowing the imagination to run free, to simply delight in the freedom and the play of emotion, ideas, and putting it down in rhythm and rhyme that makes not just meaning, but actually in some ways conquers death by creating such a form that's so perfect that it actually overcomes and triumphs over death. It overcomes time. The poem I recited is already more than 200 years old, and it would be easy to recite a poem by Shakespeare that's more than 400 years old. One has the last line, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. And the thee is not just the woman he was writing about, maybe Anne Hathaway, his wife, maybe not. And it isn't just Shakespeare, it's anyone who reads the poem. It gives life to all of us, and that's what poetry does. So here's my humble attempts to sort of do something also. The book, as you said, is called In the Garden of I Am. And when Moses asked God, what's your name? He said, I am who I am. Yeah. And the garden is the world we're living in. So, here we go. It's called I Am the Who. By the way, every poem in this book begins with I am the something. So this is trying to see the world imaginatively through the eyes of other people, other things. And in this case, I happen to be trying to see the world through the eyes of God, which is a bit presumptuous. And I just want to be able to turn this page when I get to it. So let me try and open that now. I am the who of the unnameable name. I am, who am all things, and much else besides, and much else between. I am the stub, you are the toe. I am the stink, you are the nose. I am the sweat, you are the brow. I am the shout, you are the crowd. I am the stone, you are the hand. I am the blood, you are the woman, being stoned in a burqa, in a stadium, in Afghanistan. I am love. Amo, amasamat, amamasamatasamant. Amo, namu, amasames, a mustn't, a doesn't, a can't. I am the stub. You are the pencil. I am the word. You are the writer. I am the wilderness. You are the voice. I am the mountain. You are the path that leads me back to the garden of I am. P.S. Wash your feet. I am love. So, of course, if you've tried to see the world through the eyes of God, the logical thing is to now try and look at the world through at least your own personal devils. So here's one of my devils. This poem is called I Am the Who. I am the who dreams your dreams. I am the who used to be. I am the who could have been you if you had tried harder, been taller, stronger, better looking, more talented, if you had not fucked off, if you had not fucked around, if your high school sweetie had not shown early signs of schizophrenia, if your first wife had not shown up, ever. If you had been more self-disciplined, if you had been more intelligent, if you had read more, traveled more, been more adventurous, if you had listened to your inner voice, if you had listened to your inner voice, I am the who. Perhaps if you had chosen one thing and stuck with it, dreams your dreams. Perhaps if you had tried something different, I am the who never sleeps. That devil sound familiar? Did I bring that water up here? No, I didn't. I just have that water. Just right there. Thanks so much.
That's why you didn't bring it up there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It's dangerous, isn't it? I know, I'm going to kick it over. I'm on medication, so I get dry mouth. All right. This is called I Am the Earthling Who. This is trying to see now the world through the eyes of an earthling, which is me. I am the earthling who pulled the alien from the burning wreck and kept her from the clutches of the CIA. I say her because that was her disguise. The place so swarming with agents from the FBI and MI5 and whatever the Russian Secret Service is called these days, I pretended she was my wife. No one dreamed that within the confines of what seemed an ordinary teacher's home beat a strange and phantom heart for 40 years of bliss. I mean, she could change her face, her shape, the color of her hair and eyes and skin, grow breasts between her shoulder blades, vaginas and penises wherever I wanted them. I begged her to give me a weapon, a cloak of invisibility, say, or an all-encompassing shield, or a finger ring that shot laser beams, or immortality, so I could walk into the White House or the Kremlin or the Forbidden City in Beijing, bang a few heads together, and usher in an age of peace. But she preferred quiet afternoons, candlelit dinners, making love on the rug in front of the fire, long walks in the country or along the beach, just the two of us, hand in hand, until the mothership arrived, and she reverted to the worm-like creature she had always been. Now the beautiful thing about the human imagination, you can go into anything and see the world through the eyes of that thing. And that's something science cannot do. This is called I Am the Fish Who. I am the fish who invented the bicycle. Unsung genius of the deep, I stare at the world with lidless eyes. I am convinced the world is made of water, though where flies come from remains a mystery. There must therefore be some other realm, some waterless, unbreathable otherness where invisible fish swim effortlessly forever. I myself have seen gods. They drift by very slowly, leaning over the edges of the world, telling each other not to talk. Once, when I was a fingerling chased by a pike, it came to me suddenly that all fish are created equally edible. That thought still haunts me here in the green silent shadows under this watery log. And this is the last poem from this collection. I am the river who. And the river, of course, is a metaphor. Thinking metaphorically, by the way, is exactly one of the things that poetry does. And it helps us to think metaphorically. And that is a non-scientific way of thinking. It unites the thing that you're thinking about and your own emotions and feelings and thoughts. And they come together in an image in your mind. Only a poem can do that, or of course a novel, but poems are really good at it. I am the river who, the river of life. I am the river who flowed past two white ducks, sitting side by side on a log at the edge of a backwater marsh. A well-chosen spot. No way a predator could get to them without clambering down a cliff or swimming across my fast-moving moat, and therefore they had the freedom of my creeks. Paddling downstream for the fun of it, their orange feet paddling back against the current, their feathered bums sticking up while they bobbed for weeds in the shallows of their marsh. I kept expecting them to fly off on their migration south, but they didn't. Perhaps one of them had lamed a wing, and the other was staying with its mate as the warm days of autumn fell away and winter closed in. The last time I remember seeing them, they were marooned on their log, wearing little white hats of snow, staring at the ice forming along the banks, as if someone were zippering a coat, the ice stitching itself together, until the only open water left was a narrow slit over which any stray dog could leap. Thank you very much. I want to finish with a poem I wrote a few years ago. I was walking along a path, walking my dogs, and suddenly I heard a voice. Luckily, it was my own voice. And it said, basically, sing another villanelle. And I knew immediately what the voice meant. This was a voice I heard actually inside my head. And it meant I had to write a villanelle. And a villanelle, for those of you who don't know, and I'm not going to go into all the boring details, but it's a very complex poetic form. It's harder than a sonnet. And the reason I felt I had to write it is because of 9/11, which happened in September, exactly 10 years ago. And so I want to recite this poem now. The one thing I think you might want to know about a villanelle is that the first line of the first verse has to be the last line of the second verse. And the last line of the first verse, each verse has 3 lines. The last line of the first verse has to be the last line of the third verse, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And then what makes life really rough is the very last verse has 4 lines in it, and the first line of the first verse and the last line of the first verse have to actually come together and be the last 2 lines, and they have to make sense when you put them together. And there's a complicated rhyme scheme and stuff too. The most famous one that I know is "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night" by Dylan Thomas. That's a villanelle. And so to hear a voice inside my head saying, "Oh, yeah, go up against Dylan Thomas and write a villanelle. Go shoot yourself," you know. That's basically what this voice was telling me. And yet I had to try once I heard it. The image that I had in my mind was those towers as the planes hit them. And then those towers collapsed into this empty well, this hole, filled not with water but with dust. And that's the central image. And it's an attack on our civilization, on poetry. It's an attack on the imaginative freedom of the mind. Because every religious fanatic of all stripes, of all time, they always want to put those manacles on you and make you see the world in their way and only their way, and God forbid that you should ever try and think a different thought. And so the fight against that is a fight we've always had, and we have to continue fighting it. But it was a terrible blow, and that's why I think this poem maybe is important. At least it was important for me. It's called "To Sing Another Villanelle." To sing another villanelle, we climb, or drowning, die of thirst at the bottom of this well. No fitter rhyme could this tale tell, for we, though last, are not the first to sing another villanelle. When towers burned in sky-high hell, we found ourselves, our world, reversed at the bottom of this well. When lovers jumped and others fell, our parched hearts yearned before they burst to sing another villanelle. That sidewalk thump will sound our knell, unless in art that sound is nursed at the bottom of this well. Though words can never death dispel, our spirits rise in verse unhearsed to sing another villanelle at the bottom of this well. Thank you very much.